I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, back after the weekend with another episode here of Pat's Daily, powered by Game Time and Prize Picks. We'll hear about them from them later. But Taylor, we're going to do a mailbag here today, and the way we're doing it right now, so it's Monday. Patriots just went back to the practice field today, so we're going to give a quick recap on that. Then we're going to answer some of your mailbag questions you guys submitted last week. We're going to wrap that up, get those out there. And then we're also going to come back on Wednesday with another mailbag, which we're going to kind of get into our weekly schedule here on Pat's Daily. It's a little different this week because we don't have any opponents to recap from these next 2 days. So we're kind of workshopping the next 2 days, but we're going to come in on Wednesday with a mailbag with a guest who we're not going to tell you who the guest is yet, but we're going to try and have guests every Wednesday on a mailbag with some, opponent questions, any Patriots questions you guys might have. But so we want to get to your questions as much as possible throughout the week. Right now, though, we're going to talk about what happened down in Foxboro today. The Patriots, again, back on the practice field after 3 days off. Spoke to Gerard Maye this morning. The Patriots named some captains today. He gave us a little bit more insight into the reason why Jacoby Brissett was named the starter over Drake Maye. So, Taylor, anything come out to you today? Anything, I guess, pop out from what Gerard Maye had to say?
Well, one, we tried to get more clarity on what the quarterback plan was. I asked if there ever was any real consideration to Drake Maye start in week 1, because I know we keep basically recycling the same question, but I feel like we still haven't gotten the definitive statement. And to Gerard Mayo's credit, he has consistently said that it is going to be a competition and all these things. But externally, of course, for us, it's kind of hard to see it that way when he admitted that Drake had outplayed Jacoby late. But it does also seem like, he also mentioned once again that they're taking the entire summer and spring into consideration, not just the last couple of weeks. And frankly, I think most people can agree that it makes sense to start Jacoby week 1, even if he isn't the most talented option. I think he still is the best option because of the experience and all the things he adds there. And frankly, I'd like to see what he can do when he has more chemistry with his receivers and they get a little bit more time, because obviously training camp, you want to get a lot of that under your belt, but it also takes live game reps and being able to adjust and all those things on the fly. So that was one where I wish it was a little clearer, but I think at this point we just have to accept that that's the explanation he gives. Yeah. And that while they would have considered Drake Maye starting week 1, maybe he had to be even further along, like have blown away their expectations, or maybe started to show a little earlier, because he did mention it really kind of came down to the wire a bit there. Some other things just going through my notes and the things that I tweeted. For the captains, one, Jabril Peppers, captain, been Zannis since last year, baby. Finally happened. And I mean, it's not exactly surprising. We all know that he's an extremely vocal leader. Last season, he really came into his own with this team. One, as a player, obviously stood out as one of their biggest playmakers. And I think you started to see him more comfortable. Didn't get voted captain last year, but then I think even more this season, seeing what kind of command he's taken, it makes a lot of sense. Interesting, Hunter Henry is not a captain this year. He was voted a captain for the first time last season. Mm-hmm. And then who else we got? Jacoby Brissett, who Gerard actually forgot briefly when naming the captains, and he was almost like, oh, that was turning into a thing.
So, all right. We talked about last week how, it's this whole thing's new for Mayo, and you got to get your feet under you. You got to get used to it, and you're going to take your lumps. And how he's kind of gone back and forth with some things he said in the media and stepped in a little bit. Like today's press conference, I thought was so good. And then that except for that part, I'm like, you just got to get through a perfect press conference at some point here. And he just couldn't. And it's like, of course he forgets Jacoby, because that's kind of the most controversial one, where not controversial because he's a leader and he leads the offense, but it's like, if by week 5 Drake Maye's starting, you're going to have your backup quarterback with a headset on and a C on his jersey. And so it's like, of course he forgot to mention Jacoby Brissett. Harmless mistake, but again, another example of him just kind of not batting 1,000 at the podium.
And showing his self-awareness to call himself out and say, that could have been really bad. And then Joe Cardona, first-time captain. He's one of the longest tenured players on this team, so that was really cool. I thought it might go to somebody like Brendan Schooler, obviously, because of his on-field performance. Mm-hmm. Won the Ron Burton Award for his work in the community and with people who are battling cancer. I got to speak with him really briefly about it. It seems like it's something he's really passionate about, wants to start a foundation down the road. And then Just to round it out, so captains, Drake Maye, kind of just going over that again. He also mentioned Drake Maye on this. Actually, I'll get more into that because it ties into a question that will be asked.
Yeah.
And the last one I would say, the Javon Baker situation. Feel like we got to talk about that. So Javon Baker, in case you didn't know, went live on Instagram after receiving some type of traffic ticket or whatever, and didn't have the nicest things to say about Massachusetts police. Yeah. And Maye was asked about it. He said, yes, that's being handled internally. Basically said it was an issue with maturity with Javon and that he will be disciplined internally. He's not going to miss a game, but it was something that they did think was a lot of pocket, to put it in our own words, and something they needed to address, which makes this pretty much what I think would be the second time they probably spoke to him, because obviously when he got drafted, he had, the videos and Instagram and all those things, with him being very much himself and how he felt about being a later pick. So it's disappointing. You'd like to never hear from rookies in this kind of way for an entire season. And now this is starting to feel like the decision-making with Javon Baker, not great, which is only exacerbated by the fact that, at least as much as we know externally, he's not really doing a whole lot behind the scenes to do as what Gerard Mayo said when he was drafted, where it's like, yeah, you can talk as much as you want, but if you don't show it on the field, people are going to lose respect for you. I'm not saying that's happened. It's still super early. It's just an unfortunate way for Javon Baker to start his career. Hopefully he can turn it around and, be the kind of player we want to see him be. But that was another thing, obviously, we have to address. And City So taking it day to day, avoided a serious injury. And then in practice today, he wasn't there still, but Vidarian Lowe appeared to be limited.
Yeah, the Baker thing, you can kind of look at it one of two ways, where it's like, okay, he's young, he's a rookie, he's learning, take your lumps, if you will, make mistakes, learn from it, get punished, blah, blah, blah. And, hopefully the rest is history. It never happens again. You move on. But the other way to look at it is, well, he's a rookie and he's already doing this stuff. It's like there's no filter really on that Instagram, frankly. To the first thing you do, is this the smart thing to do? Ask yourself, should I go on Instagram Live right now? Like, clearly that wasn't asked, and if it was, he made the wrong decision. And so again, one of two ways. Regardless, learn from it. Use that talent, be a great receiver down the road. We'll see what happens there. Like you said, Mayo mentioned that he's not going to miss the game, but there will be some internal discipline for Javon Baker there. The other thing quickly with Mayo, too, is the captains. They're also going to be wearing the captain's patches on their jerseys this year, which is something new that Bill Belichick did not do in the past. He said it's going to be or he treats it like a badge of honor, where he was saying that he was a captain here 7 out of 8 years when he played, and that they never did it. And it kind of felt, this is me kind of maybe not putting words into his mouth, but it kind of seemed like he felt that, my interpretation was that he earned the right to be a captain, and he was a captain and he led the team, but you didn't really see that, on the jersey. And so for them to bring that back, or not even bring it back, for them to do it, it's the first time we'll see those C's on Patriots jerseys. It'll be pretty cool. Jabril Peppers told us in the locker room today he's excited and that it does look pretty good. So I have a feeling that they might have showed them their jerseys with the C on it. So that was this morning. Mayo talked this morning about a variety of things. Practice, like you mentioned, Taylor, Vidarian Lowe there, but limited. City So still not there. He said, he talked in the locker room as well, said that he is lucky that he was worried about tearing his Achilles rather in his ankle, and they checked that out and said he's good to go. So he sounds like he's on the mend. They obviously didn't use one of those short-term IR spots on him, so we'll see if he plays this week. He didn't practice today, so that's just sort of something to monitor with the Patriots. Christian Ellis returned as well. He was limited last week in practice, not wearing a helmet with a head injury. He was back today, a full participant. You looked like you had one more thing from practice.
I was just saying the City So stuff kind of leads us in perfectly to our first mailbag question.
Perfect. So we're going to get to the mailbag. What are we, 9 minutes in? So first, we're going to get to the mailbag in a second. But first, let's hear quickly from our friends over at Game Time. NFL season is back. I'm trying to do something else. Hold on. Give me 2 seconds. We're going to get you to Game Time.
Any funny comments?
NFL season's back. There we go. There's our B-roll. And the Patriots are playing the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. You can get in over at Paycor Stadium for the lowest price guaranteed with Game Time. They have a new feature. It's called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets to your favorite teams play, to see your favorite teams play live, even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. We're going to do a live read right now, Taylor, with the B-roll, and I'm going to go on the Game Time app on my cell phone and check out just how much time or how much money you can get into Patriots Stadium for. Right now, it's looking like Patriots at Bengals. You can get in for as low as $136. That's down like $25 from the last time I did this read. Not that bad. They have super deals, amazing deals, great deals, all on the site, and they make it super simple to check out, pay, and get to the game. So we're going to do a lot more of these with the Seattle Seahawks coming up because that's going to be a home game. But if you're going out to Cincinnati, make sure you check out Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app today, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that is code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. That's Game Time. All right. Let's get into our mailbag, Taylor. Taylor has all the questions loaded up, so he'll show them. Maybe I'll rate them. Maybe he'll read them, but we'll both try and give our best answer possible. So, Taylor, I'll read it. Best guess at the starting offensive line for Sunday, week 1 in Cincinnati. What do you got?
Yeah, so City So and Vidarian Lowe, obviously, with their status is up in the air. The way it's looked is the right side has been consistent from what we saw in Washington, where you've got Layden Robinson at right guard, Mike Nwenu at right tackle. I don't love that in pass protection because, again, I think Mike Nwenu is a Pro Bowl guard in pass protection. He's an okay tackle where he's not really going to be the reason that these guys get sacked or get hit or anything, but there's also going to be some ugly reps where he has to like run and chase edge defenders just to make sure he forces them around the edge to give his quarterbacks time.
Right.
Then, obviously, center, David Andrews. Left side is where things have been kind of interesting. You still have Chuks Okorafor as the left tackle because he pretty much now we know he is the backup left tackle behind Vidarian Lowe. They don't seem to want to put Caden Wallace in quite yet. And then at left guard, we've seen Nick Leverett, but also today we saw practice squad member Michael Jordan rotating at that left guard spot. And then Nick Leverett also took some snaps at center. What it looked like, what my interpretation is, I think that we can expect Michael Jordan to be a practice squad elevation. Mm-hmm. So he'll be obviously the backup just in case something were to happen to David Andrews. Then Nick Leverett would most likely slide inside. And I think Liam Thornadell right now is their backup center.
I was just going to say, he got some reps. He was like the sort of second guy there. I saw that because that when they did that first line with Michael Jordan there, then they went to the twos and Leverett went to guard and Thornadell went to center. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I think that they really want Nick Leverett as their top backup for all the interior spots, although obviously for center it's not great. But I will add that to the practice squad, they clearly did notice that they had some trench issues, both on offense and defense. I'll just mention offense specifically this time. Some guys they added, Brian Hudson, very interesting player, has 5-position versatility, at least according to an interview that Justin Mello of the Draft Network did. It was a really great piece. I liked some of the stuff that I saw from him on tape. He's a guy who actually, him and Jerome Carvin, another practice squad addition, had a clean track record snapping this preseason, which the Patriots centers outside of David Andrews cannot say the same. So a little bit of reinforcement there. And then really quick, just to address the defensive line additions to the practice squad, they added O'Shawn Mathis, I believe is how his name is pronounced. Really interesting profile. He's got super long arms, massive hands, kind of going to be an interesting project for Joe Kim and defensive line coach Jerry Montgomery. And then Brevin Allen, who's more of a true defensive end type. Not as exciting for me as O'Shawn Mathis, but another guy to just add some trench depth there. But Patriots to the practice squad did try to address some of the issues that we all saw this preseason on the edge for the defense and its center and interior period for the offensive line, and even getting guys with a lot of positional versatility. Because outside of Leverett, you don't really have another guy on the Patriots who you're truly comfortable playing center, playing guard on both sides and all that kind of stuff. And I think they added that on the practice squad. But just to wrap it up, week 1, it looks like that offensive line is going to be from left to right. Chuks Okorafor, Nick Leverett, David Andrews, Layden Robinson, and Mike Nwenu.
Yeah, that seems like the best guess to me too. The interesting wrinkle, you mentioned it already, is if Michael Jordan can overtake Leverett as a practice squad elevation and then take over left guard. But it felt more of, like you said, a contingency plan depending on if, who's the backup center and how those interior guys rotate. The one thing I'll ask you, if Vidarian Lowe is healthy, right? He came back to practice today, limited fashion, wasn't running through drills or anything. But at this point, Monday going into Tuesday, they'll have Tuesday off. Wednesday, they practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If Vidarian Lowe is healthy, who do you roll with? Is it Lowe or is it Okorafor?
Great segue into the next mailbag question. What exactly is the plan for the offensive line? So once again, the week one lineup looks like it is going to be on the left side, Chuks Okorafor with Nick Leverett. I think long-term, whenever Vidarian Lowe is healthy, I think we saw the combination they want. I think they want Vidarian Lowe on the left side, Chuks on the right side. Mm-hmm. Then I think they want Mike Nwenu at right guard, and left guard will be a competition between Sidy Sow and Layden Robinson. Layden Robinson probably has the advantage right now based on his preseason. They were both up and down in that last game, but I think Robinson, although obviously he was playing some inferior competition, was more consistent. So that is what I think they'd like the plan to be. If one of those two guys at the left guard spot, Sidy or Layden, either one of those young guys, can truly earn it and be a net positive, I think that's huge for you, because I know that people don't like Chuks Okorafor because he's not Jonah Williams, although I really think people need to understand the difference between them isn't huge, especially if you look at just the numbers.
Is Jonah Williams line up?
He's a right tackle anyway. He's got a lot of tackle experience, but I know that's just the triggering thing for me. But I do think that Chuks, he's been a starter for 6 years on the right side.
Yep.
I think he's good enough to get you by for a season until Caden Wallace hopefully can maybe even take over midseason and give you a little bit better run blocking there. And Vidarian Lowe is still a massive question mark. As much as I liked how he bounced back in the second preseason game against the Eagles, we still don't know really how far he's come along, how he's going to look against a starting defensive line, and also how much this back injury and missing that time is going to hurt him. So the left side is really where I think your big question mark is, just because there's so many young guys and unproven guys in this system. But I do like what you've got on the right side, where Chuks is good enough. You know, he's not going to be a world beater or anything, but he's at least a stopgap option for you. And then Mike Nwenu as an elite guard. But I do think that's what they want to be long term.
Because and I wonder, like, you know, if Vidarian Lowe gets healthy this week, you want to bring him back, like you mentioned, you would rather. Okay, well, now we have a core full of play right tackle, and then we can bump Mike inside. It's almost like it's already too late, where you want to have a consistent offensive line. We talk about it all the time, where get 5 guys in there, just get the same 5 guys. And obviously you want your best guys too, but if you're practicing with Chuks on the left, Mike on the right, and then Robinson inside, and then all of a sudden Wednesday comes, Thursday comes, and Lowe's like, I can play, I still think you roll with this offensive line for this week. Maybe Lowe's healthy enough to be your swing, your backup tackle. But once that next plan comes in where, okay, Lowe's in, we can move Mike inside. Like, that sort of feels like a next week thing to me, because I feel like they've already been practicing with this, you know, these 5 for long enough, where run it, get comfortable, and then we can kind of make adjustments as we move on.
Also, I'm such an idiot. I just realized I missed your lining up joke. My long-term memory is terrible.
That's okay. Yeah, I was just going with Chuks lining up on the
I knew I missed something, and I was like, "What the hell?" I'm like, "Something's not clicking here." That's on me. Whatever. It was a good joke, buddy. Good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And then there was one more thing I wanted to address. The offensive line combinations, because I actually spoke with Regan pretty extensively about this today. I know that we all do want that starting combination, and I think the team wants that as well. I think everybody wants that. The reality is the Brown staff last year, so Alex Van Pelt, Scott Peters, and then the Patriots were both teams that had almost a dozen different offensive line combinations. As much as we want there to be continuity, the reality is you're talking about a position where the attrition rate is unfortunately very high just by the nature of the position. Like, if you look at Vidarian Lowe and Sidy Sow, those were 2 of the most consistent guys the entire summer. And then sometimes shit happens and guys get hurt, and you got to find a way to still make it work for everybody. And I agree. I do think that Mike Nwenu was probably a better fit at right tackle than having to go with the Caden Wallace, because he's still coming along. And at least with Layden Robinson, he is sandwiched between David Andrews and Mike Nwenu. So his mistakes won't be quite as glaring, because ideally he should be able to have some help most of the time, and they can compensate for some of the mistakes he'll make. So, you know, I totally understand how frustrating it is that they just keep plugging in these pieces and moving guys from one side to the other. But that's also the system. You need to have positional versatility, especially in the league nowadays, because of the attrition on the offensive line, the lack of opportunity to work together. You do need guys to have some experience, even if it's little, at different spots and working together. Otherwise, you're not giving a whole lot of value. Because if you can only line up one spot, it gives them less options to find that best starting combination. So a part of this that I think is fascinating, and it makes perfect sense why people are annoyed. But you really do need to find these different permutations just in case, if X happens, then we get to Y. And it seemed crazy when they did it in that one day at training camp. And we're like, wait, what the hell is going on? Why is everyone moving so much? And it seemed crazy. And then not even a couple of days later, they're actually proving that
it had to happen. Yeah, right. So, yeah. All right. What else we got?
And also in the comments section, there's been a lot of talk about people the Patriots should get. So that leads us into this. The second to last offensive line question. Any available offensive tackles we're bringing in? I'm going to make this quick.
Okay.
If an offensive tackle who'd be good enough to be on this team, and, I don't want to say good enough to knock out Venerian Lowe because we still don't know, but if he's going to be good enough to knock out Chooks, he's not going to be on the market.
Yeah,
we are in September. We are a week away from the regular season. The guys that are on the market for a reason. They are either old, they have significant injury concerns, or the league doesn't think they're good enough to play, or some combination of all those factors. Like David Bakhtiari, we all know he seems like a perfect scheme fit because he comes from that Packers system, but the guy's played very little football in the past few years. So do you really want to create this whole controversy and mix and match or whatever in the offensive line room when these guys are older, might not even want to join your team, and might end up getting hurt anyway? And I know that people don't love Chuks Okorafor, but the guy is 26, 27 years old. He's still very young. He's athletic. He doesn't maybe have the sands you want for an offensive tackle, especially on the right side. He doesn't get the movement you want. The discipline, as we've seen, is also an issue that he's going to have to get corrected. But he's going to be able to do more for you than like a Charles Leno who's coming off a major injury, or, again, the David Bakhtiari. So, and Trent Williams is not coming here. Please stop. Like, that dude is trying to finish his career on a good team. I don't think there's any amount of money that you can throw at him that he's going to come to freaking New England after we've already seen a parade of great players be like, I have no interest in going to Massachusetts when you guys when you have no projectable future. So please, we have to stop with this. I understand wanting to know what options are available. Tay is telling you, everybody wants good offensive tackles. If they're still available, they're probably not very good.
Well, so, and I can't remember when we asked this mailbag question because we were going to do this at some point last week. I don't remember if it was before or after roster cuts or the claims that went through, but like the guys that were available and worth bringing in were Zach Thomas and Demontre Jacobs, and that's who they brought in. And that was the quality on the market where these guys were more worth bringing in than. And now, granted, Bakhtiari and Leno might cost a little bit more money because they have more experience and this, that, and the other thing. But Zach Thomas, like they made their moves. They have the depth pieces they thought were worth bringing to the 53. They're working with what they got. Elliot Wolf told us that he has confidence in this group, and whether you do or not. I don't mean to put it bluntly as fans, but I guess it doesn't really matter because it's Elliot Wolf's job, and he's the one who comes in and makes these decisions. And you got to give them that chance. And then when it does ultimately go bad, if it does, then you hold their feet to the fire. But for now, they've made some moves. They bring in Zach Thomas, Demontre Jacobs. They're rolling with those, what we think are the starting five, and we're going to go from there. So,
and it looks like, just for clarity on what those guys are going to do or who they are, because I know maybe some people didn't see on Twitter. If you want clips, I uploaded clips for almost all the guys they added to the practice squad. Some guys I haven't gotten to yet, but most of them, and the ones I think are the most interesting, they should be on my timeline. Demontre Jacobs, big, long, also all these offensive linemen and defensive linemen they brought in are long and have big hands. Clearly a theme that they're looking for, especially with the strike system. The whole thing, the strike system, is basically just a way of communicating how Scott Peterson, the coaches, want these guys to go about pass protection. So how you want to set, how you want to initially attack, and how you want to counter based on what the defensive linemen do to respond to what your initial strike was. And a big part of that is being able to have long arms, hit guys hard enough that you disrupt their rush and you can take control of the rep. Demontre Jacobs really fits that mold. Zach Thomas, more of an interior guy. Like, he was repping at guard today, repped on both sides, but at guard in the preseason for the Rams. Only really played tackle for them in one game last year against the Bengals, ironically, and it was pretty ugly. It was also, he was just put in a tough situation. So just those two guys. I don't know if we've really talked about them much. Jacobs is a guy I'd love to see maybe develop into a swing tackle option, maybe a spot starter. I love his tools. Zach Thomas, I didn't love his tape quite as much, but I also can see how he fits their system and what they might have in mind for him.
Love it. All right, what else we got?
Wait, what dream did I crush? Oh, for the new alignment.
Just bringing in different guys.
All right, last O-line question. Maybe we can do an ad read after this.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Where do you think Cole Strange fits into the future of the O-line when he gets healthy? I want to hear what you think, so I think we're on the same page.
I think we're on the same page, and I want to give you credit for this. Cole Strange seems like there's a chance that they could, use him at center along the line. And I forget if it was said by, a coach or a player or whatever, but I heard it floated elsewhere this weekend where they have the guards kind of not figured out, but they have who they think are their guards right now and in the future. And clearly Cole Strange isn't necessarily in that rotation because he's been out for so long and he's out, has been out with the knee injury for some time. But David Andrews is getting up there, and he signed a 2-year deal. And they don't have a real backup center right now. Nick Leverett's their backup center, and we saw Nick Leverett in Washington with the amount of tough quarterback center exchanges between him and Drake Maye. So, if Cole Strange can snap, turn that guy into your backup center and make that 29th overall pick from 2021 or 2022, whatever it was, make it worth your while. Mm-hmm. Cole Strange isn't a bust just yet. He's been injured, and that's too bad. But when he's been on the football field, he's been pretty good. So if you can make him and turn him into, your center of the future, I'm all for it. Now, his contract situation and where he's at, it might make it tough because if David Andrews is here for 2 years, you're not going to put a 5th-year option on Cole Strange. That number is not worth it. But if he's willing to re-sign here and be a developmental interior offensive lineman, rotate in at guard, be in the guards conversation while working on snapping a football and understanding line calls and how the system works and things like that, I can see him being that next option behind or your next center when David Andrews hangs it up.
100%. Isn't the 5th-year option it's just offensive line, right? It's not position.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be insane to use that on him. And again, I think also Gerard Mayo told us last week, Dakota Randall had asked him about it, that they did see Cole as somebody who had center versatility.
Okay.
We always talk about we always talk about how he's not great against power. Cole knows that. He put on weight last offseason and tried to compensate for that. If there's one position where maybe not being the sturdiest is going to hurt you the least, it's center, because you're very rarely in one-on-one situations. And when you are, it's usually in some kind of blitz look where the quarterback knows they need to get the ball out of their hands pretty quickly. And also he is a smart guy. He's crazy athletic. He's athletic enough to play tackle technically. If you just look at the measurables, I don't know how he'd actually look. I know people have floated that around. I think it would be crazy to try to ask a guy who's played guard for so long, who hasn't played tackle in so long, because he did it at Chattanooga, but I think it was only briefly. Center I think makes the most sense for him long term.
I'm with you. All right, let's talk. Let's hear from our friends over at Game Time. Then we'll get to the last bit of these Patriots questions before we head into Tuesday. So it's Prize Picks this time, and they are America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action this football season. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Prize Picks is actually running a promo for the month of September where one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you a win on Prize Picks. It's the entire week of September, so you can use that one passing yard as one of your blocks and watch the winnings roll in. You can see it on the screen in front of me. Caleb Williams right now, the over-under is 255.5, or the more or less rather, but it is 1 yard for Caleb Williams. So make sure to use that and put your Prize Picks together on the app. Download it today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get those $50. It's guaranteed. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. All right. Wait, that's actually I'll give our ad some more love, because one passing yard for Caleb Williams
that's nuts.
It's not bad. That is just another parlay or piece in your thing that just makes it so much better. I can't use the gambling words. I'm sorry. It's just, it rolls off the tongue. But yeah, go download Prize Picks, use that Caleb Williams square, and watch the winnings roll in. So all right, let's finish up these questions.
All right, so some Drake Maye talk.
Let's go.
Do you think Drake can develop his ability to recognize disguises of defensive schemes while watching film and practicing as a backup? And it's interesting.
Did I ask you this the other day? Or did I say it on the show? We were talking about the comment or the notion where you only learn football by playing football, and how there's been so many vanilla defenses, or there's not so many, but there's vanilla defenses in preseason. And when you watch the Jets and the Niners, etc., over the last 4 weeks, or the next 4 weeks when you're Drake Maye, can you truly diagnose stuff just by watching it? And they have the VR stuff. that may help. But at the end of the day, you kind of just have to get thrown into the fire, don't you think?
100%. And I think when it comes to, so I asked Drake about this in the locker room last week, whether it was more safeties and how they try to trick you on the back end, or if it was more pressure schemes. I figured it was pressure schemes because the Patriots use all the disguises in the book on the back end. Like there's very little, I don't want to say very little, but he's seen a lot when it comes to disguising coverages from the secondary's perspective. And he does a really good job responding to those. He has since college. He mentioned that it's not so much about that, although that does play a factor. It is the pressure schemes because teams do things so differently. Like if the way that Todd Bowles is going to like blitz you is going to be very different than what you get even from the Patriots. Right. Like there's just so many different ways. Like some people use like the Bengals, for example, they like to send their safeties and their slot corners depending on the certain look. You know, against some under center formations, they'll send their linebackers. And some teams like won't blitz you at all. Some teams are going to send pressure from depth. Someone to send it. You know, if you have a boundary corner, they're going to send that guy, or they'll send two corners. There's so many different schemes that he's never even seen yet.
Right.
So I think to a degree, just knowing what they look like and what the tells are, like, you know, if Alex Van Pelt's telling him, if you see a safety who's lined up directly over a slot corner, that slot corner is going to blitz you because obviously secondary always wants to disguise, but there's only so much you can do while staying structurally sound. Right. So being able to see those things on tape will give him a leg up. So he say, oh, you know, I'm game planning for this. I know what it looks like. But yeah, there's also the fact that you want to actually be able to do it. And then it's one thing to say mentally, okay, I throw hot or whatever. And then it's different to actually execute that because, you know, oh, I got to throw over the guy, or I got to throw around, you know.
My feet have to be there, things like that. Yeah.
It's just there's millions of permutations to being an NFL player, and that's what it is. It's every rep you learn something. And those are the things where I think, yeah, Drake Maye is going to have to do that at some point. I do think there's some value to being on the practice squad, like Gerard Mayo mentioned today, the show team. Drake's going to get a lot.
I was just gonna line you up with this question from the chat, Taylor.
Perfect. Yeah. So
is Drake playing scout team, or what are your thoughts? So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So he is going to be the scout team quarterback. Drake touched on it. Gerard Mayo mentioned it as well. Gerard did mention that while it's going to be helpful to emulate the quarterbacks they're going to be facing, like Joe Burrow, Geno Smith, Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers, his idol, it's going to be helpful for him to learn how certain guys do certain things and guys who've obviously had success in the NFL. But he did mention that the way that they want the reads to happen is going to be how the Patriots want those reads to go, so that there's not nothing gets lost in translation. I do think that he's still going to be shadowing Jacoby to a degree. But I do think at the same time, because you only have a certain number of quarterbacks, that you are going to see Drake more handling those scout team duties.
He's got a lot on his plate. I mean, if it's going to be shadowing Brissett a little bit and getting some of those first team-ish reps, right? Because it's going to be Jacoby who gets the bulk of them, but you still need your backup to be ready for it. You know, you have to learn what the Patriots offense is going to do against the opponent's defense that week. Then you have to take your scout team reps. Then you're helping. Someone mentioned today or asked Mayo if he'd be like running, meetings. And I don't think that's going to be like a majority of what Maye does, but there's going to be, he's getting a lot thrown at him, and he has to be a sponge because he's going to learn the other team's offenses too, to a degree. I mean, mostly it's just off of cards, but like you said, they want you to emulate those guys. So he's going to be taking in a ton of information over the next 4 or 5 weeks until they think he's ready to go, which it's a lot.
And he's mixing in with the top. Mayo mentioned he's going to be mixing in like he was in the summer as well.
Right, exactly. So it's a good thing. You gotta be ready for it. You gotta take everything in. You gotta be a very good note taker. I think if you're a guy like Drake Maye who needs to keep all not your priorities in track, but what the team wants you to do and how you can kind of mold what you're learning from other guys versus being yourself and also the next quarterback of the Patriots. So it's a good development plan, but it's going to be a lot. So
it's tough being a quarterback in the NFL, especially when you also the fact that Gerard Mayo said 100%. I don't think it's a shock because of the quarterback depth chart, but he did say if Jacoby got hurt, Drake would be the guy, and he is the second stringer. So I do think they still are going to have it in the back of their mind. Something could happen to Jacoby because we've known Jacoby got banged up in the preseason. He got hurt for the Commanders last year. He's not someone you can necessarily rely on to play all those games. So there is a chance that they have to prepare for where Drake is going to have to go in for emergency duty.
Yeah, there's no quarterbacks on the practice squad. So it's those 3 guys, 2 rookies and Jacoby Brissett. So they're comfortable with, if shit hits the fan and Jacoby goes down earlier than they'd expect, they sound confident that, okay, well, we still want to keep this development plan going for Drake Maye and not put him in there just yet. But if we have to, we're ready for it and we'll be prepared for it. So we'll see where it goes.
All right. Do you think that Drake Maye is mentally tough enough to go through the ups and downs? And when does he go through the ups and downs when he does eventually start?
I don't like to I would never say he doesn't until we see it, right? We saw it towards the end of the Mac Jones tenure where, he's spiking his helmet and he's yelling at Matt Patricia. And there's a bunch of there's the ups and downs, that comes out of guys. He was yelling in Arizona on the sideline and, all that stuff, right? And so, but up until that point, I felt like Mac Jones was, mentally strong and could handle the ups and downs his rookie year, things like that. And then it comes out of you when the worst comes to worst. So to sit here and look at what I've seen from Drake Maye and assume that he's going to turn into a teapot and burst, I don't think that's going to happen. From my vantage point, he seems like an even keel, not too high, not too low, really, really athletically sound quarterback who is smarter than even I think we thought as far as understanding the offense and how quickly he's picked it up and how quickly he's, transitioned his footwork and things like that. So at least on the football field, the mental side of things, he's got it. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to go through the ups and downs, but that's one thing where it just kind of has to happen, right? Because it's not going to be perfect. If he does have to get thrown into the fire, if Brissett goes down, that's going to be different than, a perfect start where the team's not doing great, but you get him ready for 10 days and things like that. So it's kind of a wait and see thing. But from everything I've seen, I don't see why anybody would think that Drake Maye is not mentally tough.
And of course, like you said, you don't really know until you know. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that mental toughness was the thing that Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo kept hammering home when they were talking about what quarterback they were going to pick. Kept talking about, the physical traits are awesome.
That felt like such a shot at Mac Jones, too, when they said that.
I mean, but he literally did mention the body language. He said
that's body language.
He said not getting too high or too low. He's called Drake Maye even keel. Yep. Drake Maye always talks about keeping the main thing, which is hilarious if you are watching The Bachelorette this season. There's a fun little tie-in there. Like a hilarious contestant was saying that. I'm like, oh my God, it's reminding me of Drake Maye. Anyway, I do think that all the work that the Patriots did to find their quarterback really he had to check the boxes of being someone who's mentally tough to go through the rigors of an NFL season. Of course, you never know what that looks like. Drake Maye is someone who also has a history of getting down on himself when things don't really go right. Not in a bad way. I feel like Mac kind of did that, but also it started to come outwards. I think with Drake, it really is he's just very hard on himself and wants to be better. And it's going to take some massaging from Alex Van Pelt and Jacoby Brissett to be like, hey, man, it's not that serious. I think it happened at one point. Jacoby mentioned that he tried to make sure that Drake didn't get down on himself and was like, hey, man, you finished practice on a great note. You won the day. Yeah. Keep that and grow from it. So a big part of it is going to be that supporting cast around him. TC McCartney, maybe Ben McAdoo as well in that equation, making sure that mentally he's in a place where he understands the context and is ready to get to the next week and, keep moving forward. And I think that baseline, he should be okay, but every young guy needs support. And I think that's going to be big.
Absolutely. And it's critical too. I think one of the things we've talked about here is once you go to Drake, you can't go back. That's something that can screw with the guy's head a little bit, I think, where Jacoby plays poorly and then Drake comes in, he plays worse. It's like, well, you already ripped the Band-Aid off. You can't put Brissett back in now and bench Drake Maye. And again, maybe Drake Maye would handle that okay, but you don't know. And I think that is such a shot to the confidence where you go back and forth with the quarterbacks. And it's not fair to either guy, frankly, because at that point in time, Mayo's telling us now the whole team, the organization's behind Jacoby Brissett. Once you take him off the field, you're essentially saying that, okay, we are now behind the kid. And now if he stinks, you go back to Jacoby like, hey, actually, we kind of want you back in there. It's just that's what can't happen. Go ahead.
I think if Jacoby got hurt and they put Drake in and he struggled, I do think there'd be some consideration of saying, hey, we did this because our quarterback was hurt. We didn't really want to put Drake Maye in. I think in that situation, the media is probably going to eat him alive for it. But I also think it's a logical decision because you don't want to put Drake Maye in that soon. But he is the best option on your roster. You could sign somebody off the street, but is that guy going to be better for you, even if he is taking the hits or whatever? I think there would be some consideration of, yes, if Drake has to go in because of injury, we'll pull him if, Jacoby's healthy and he clearly is our starting option. But I don't think if you put Drake in because he's playing better,
right,
Or if he does go in because of injury and then plays well, yeah, that's when I think the cat's out of the bag. And it's you have to kind of ride with him because he's showing you that he can do great things. And again, if you're not worried about his confidence and he's showing you some progress, then it's a very different conversation.
It's also, too, like you think about it this way where, okay, say Brissett goes down for like 4 weeks and Maye goes in there for like a month and isn't playing great. It's almost like, do you just leave him in there? Or like, because then you go back to Jacoby and it's, okay, Drake, you were put in too soon. And even when you were given a trial by fire chance, you failed. Like, that's still a shot to the confidence where we're going to go back to the veteran. And now you have to yo-yo with that again. So, again, we hope Brissett doesn't go down. And we hope this whole thing works out according to plan. But there's a chance that it doesn't. And then, that's kind of why we have to talk about all these contingencies.
But they've still said Jacoby Brissett is their best option. And they're all about transparency. So if that happens and they're like, hey, we still think that Jacoby is better equipped, but we do want to give you an opportunity because you are our second best quarterback. Yeah, again, I would love to hear other opinions as well. I don't think this is one that's very cut and dry. But I think injury is one that may kind of change the dynamic of how they go about wanting to, protect Drake from himself and from any shots of confidence.
Sure.
Okay, we can kind of go speedish round for the rest. I want to get to a couple in the comment section before we pull out of here. Are the current inconsistencies with Drake Maye's footwork and stepping into trouble that JT O'Sullivan pointed out in his video concerning? Can they be corrected? So, I love JT O'Sullivan. He brings up so many things that I either completely miss or sometimes think in the back of my head, this is kind of odd. Like route spacing was one where there were 2 times in the Commanders game, there were in-breaking routes to the same depth. And I'm like, I don't know, that's supposed to look like it. But you know what? Yeah. I don't make plays, so I don't want to necessarily make it public. And things like that, he does help. With Drake Maye stepping into trouble, there is some truth to that, but I also was confused because sometimes you're talking about like a 5-step drop where you're getting so deep, especially from shotgun. That's essentially a 7-step drop, the deepest you can take, where you're getting so far back, you have to usually hitch up at least once, usually twice. Twice typically is as your progression. If the first hit, you don't like your option, you take one more and you get ready to throw. I felt like there was some gray area where even after listening to JT, I was like, I don't really know if this is a time where you could really get upset with Drake. It seemed more like sometimes the center gets pushed back. And if you're taking a 5-step, it just, then you're stepping up and the center's getting pushed back. It's, that's going to happen. But I don't want to say there's no truth to it. I do think it's something that we should keep an eye on whenever he does take the field again. And I will actually be recording a video with the Athletics' Derek Klassen, very good friend of the podcast. We're going to break down some clips from Drake Maye this preseason. So look forward to that. That is coming sometime this week, and we're going to dive deeper into that. So that's just my quick evaluation of it. Derek is much better equipped to talk about that kind of thing, so I'll leave it to him. But any other thoughts you have?
The only thing I'll add is the question that towards the end is, can they be corrected? Of course they can. Drake Maye is 2022, and this is a work in progress. And I think Brissett being named the starter has made that clear that they still want to work on Drake Maye's game and kind of get those kinks out of it. So. Drake will be fine.
And even JT, I think, mentioned this is a correctable thing. It's just difficult because it's how you navigate the pocket. And that's so much of that is subconscious, where reps obviously help, but that's one where like you get better at football by playing football. It's going to get hard not to learn to not step into a condensing pocket when it's not really an issue you have to worry about in practice.
Yep.
All right. You want to read this one?
Sure. Jalen Polk and KJ Osborne seem to be a cut above any of the X's on the roster. What are the advantages of starting a guy like Tyquan Thornton over them, and are the route trees different from those 2 positions?
So, one, actually look up Tyquan Thornton on my Twitter page. He was getting open this preseason, and I think he was also getting open in training camp from what we saw. There just wasn't a ton of on-ball production, at least not the kind that you would expect from someone like Tyquan Thornton, who can take the top off, but you still saw the flashes of it, I think, as a separator. And that was one thing. Remember, we're talking about buff Tyquan. Is there any reason that we should be excited about him? And I was saying with these new coaches, with Tyler Hughes and with Tyquan Underwood, let's give him a chance to see if the route running can improve. Because obviously it was ugly last year, but Troy Brown was given a new title for a reason. They brought in new receivers coaches for a reason. I think you're seeing some of that pay off. Obviously, the work that Tyquan's putting in has been huge. I think at the X position specifically, they just want somebody who is a true vertical threat. whether that's Tyquan Thornton, Jalen Reagor, Javon Baker, Kayshon Boutte. Those are guys with more of a track record of doing that. Now, Jalen Polk, I think, is kind of similar, but I just don't think they see him as a Z, maybe because of his body type, skill set, what have you. But also, to that point, they use a lot of formations where basically the X and the Z are both outside the numbers and on the line of scrimmage, where you're essentially doing the exact same thing. Your route tree is more limited because of where you're aligned, and they love their vertical routes. They love their comebacks and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to an X versus a Z's route tree, there is overlap because in their system, there is some interchangeability there. The biggest distinction is the X receiver in their 3-by-1 formations will be isolated by himself. So that's really where, and even sometimes the Z on the other side is doing the same thing, but when you're isolated, it almost guarantees that you're going to have a one-on-one matchup unless the defense is saying, we can't leave this guy one-on-one. We're going to try to find some way to create a bracket situation. But I'd say in terms of what the difference is between the two, that's it. I'd agree Polk and Osborne in terms of their production were definitely better. I think we're going to see some formations where Polk or Osborne are in the slot and then the other guys outside. But I do think they really like Tyquan Thornton as well. I'm willing to hang back and wait and see if when the ball does come his way, he can capitalize consistently. But I also just think right now, those are your three, not their three best shooters, because obviously DeMario Douglas, but he's a bit limited schematically. So they're going to rotate these guys. There's going to be a ton of that. But I do also think because of the role that Tyquan plays as that X, he's probably going to be getting more snaps maybe than the other guys.
I think so too. And I think it's, you mentioned the receivers, or the receivers coaches rather. Give Tyquan a game, 2 games, like a full 60 minutes, right? Because we only saw a couple drives in the preseason, and he wasn't very productive. But you tweeted the whole reel of his kind of highlights. He was getting open; they just weren't getting him the football. So if they can see that, look at it, correct it. Jacoby knows it, Tyquan knows it. This guy's open. Let's get him the football. And he's productive, then there you go. And if he's not, and he's, the regular season comes around and he's not as productive as you'd like, then you start to, maybe see a Jalen Polk move transition to X a little bit. Or maybe, Jalen Reagor kind of gets some reps in there once he's, elevated from the scout team or things like that. But for now, I agree with you. Give Tyquan the opportunity to show that, this is a different player than we've seen the last couple of years.
100%, baby. All right. Gonzo being shaky in the preseason worries me about him, and Chase on an island week 1. How much help do you think the Pats send his way, or do they let Gonzo work? I know I said quick fire, but this is kind of a loaded question.
It's loaded, because we don't know if Ja'Marr Chase is going to play this week. He was at practice today. He was not in pads in Cincinnati. He is in the middle of a contract dispute, I guess you want to call it. He's there. He's hanging out, but he wants to get his money. Guy who's 2 years into his 4-year rookie deal. But he apparently, funny, we were talking about this today too, he wants to get paid 1 cent more than his friend Justin Jefferson up in Minnesota, which I like it. It's funny. It's petty. It's all in good fun. But long story short, we don't know if Ja'Marr Chase is going to play. I think he will. I think they get it ironed out. I feel like these things happen, and eventually once the games come around, he'll either play on his current contract or they will find a way to get the deal done. Because, look, it's the Bengals, and as good as they are as a team, they've had slow starts to seasons in the past. And if you're missing a Ja'Marr Chase, that just makes that the likelihood of that happening even greater. So loaded question. Also
notoriously, they hold their ground in these situations.
Yeah.
They're not really like the 49ers where they always find a solution. Sometimes they don't. So
that's true. T. Higgins is still playing on the franchise tag, and he had to suck it up and is now playing on it. And frankly, I heard doesn't seem too happy about it either. So
he shouldn't be. He's the only guy I think who got the tag that didn't get a new deal.
Right. Yeah.
So nasty work.
But all right, say he plays then. Say Ja'Marr Chase does play. What are your thoughts on Gonzo and his matchup with him this weekend?
That's going to be one of the toughest matchups he's going to have in his entire career.
Yep.
Now, I will say with AJ Brown, I kind of like that we at least saw that, because I think AJ Brown is the perfect receiver to really give Christian Gonzalez a challenge, because he's just massive. Right. He's so strong. He's so physical. He's so good on those 50-50 jump ball opportunities. And we still saw Christian Gonzalez. It wasn't perfect by any means, but he didn't let him get behind him. And that's going to be the biggest thing with Ja'Marr Chase, is what scares you the most. And one thing, he moves around a lot. So it's going to be interesting if the Patriots say, Gonzo, you're going on the boundary, whether it's T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, you get that guy, or do they truly have him shadow and follow Jamar Chase in the slot where he was used last season? But the biggest things with Jamar Chase that you don't want are him to beat you deep, and you want to tackle him after, because he's one of the most dangerous yak receivers in football, despite his profile being an X receiver and a big guy. You wouldn't really think of him that way, but he's crazy in that regard as well. I think it would be a challenge, obviously, because he's such a talented player. Like, these are two unicorns athletically. I am not reading into, we talked about this, so I'm not really going to beat it over the head. I'm not buying into Gonzo. This summer was so bad, we need to worry about him. If it happens on the field, we can bring all that up. And I think it's important to acknowledge, but we also need to acknowledge that these guys are working on things in practice. And there are certain, nuances to this, like in one-on-ones where there's certain routes that they're not even worried about, because they're like, you'd be running into leverage in a real game. I don't really care. I just don't want to. I'm not worried about Gonzalez right now. I do think it's going to be a battle. I think both guys are going to have their wins, but I don't think you give them any help unless you absolutely need it. I think they're going to game plan is maybe there are some split safety looks. You want to mix those in. The Patriots like their cover 2, disguise as cover 1. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to treat it like they did with A.J. Brown, where it's like, yep, Gonzo, do your thing, be a great freak athlete, insanely poised young corner.
It's game week now, so that's where I'm at too with it. Where say his camp wasn't great, you can think of what you want. I personally am not reading into it. I wouldn't even be one to say that it wasn't good. But now is where you get paid, and now is where it matters. So if that inconsistency carries over, then we start to get worried. But for now, it's game week. Get out there, shut down Jamar Chase, and prove why you're the Patriots CB1. So.
Yes, sir. All right, these ones are actually quicker. Del Pettis, mainly a special teams player, or will he get playing time? I think he will be a core special teamer.
Yeah.
But we saw Jalen Mills and even Adrian Phillips, which was due to injury. You could tell the Patriots didn't want to put Adrian Phillips on the field very much. But we have seen with these 3 safety packages, all it takes is for one guy to go down, one guy needs a breather, gets banged up, what have you. Del Pettis is the next man up. So Marte Mapu getting healthy is obviously going to make things a bit more challenging, and we'll see how that shakes out. But I would not be surprised if we see Del Pettis getting some actual playing time in some of those 3 safety nickel and dime packages.
Del Pettis over Brendan Schooler at that role?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. I agree. I think he's of course, but he'll be out there on special teams, but they like to mix and match. And even like week 2 last year, you saw Marte Mapu go from a linebacker, fringe starter, in and out, to being one of the core guys in that 3 safety shell they used against Miami too. So it could get interesting for Pettis pretty quickly.
Yep. All right. Then this last one, and then we're going to do an actual rapid fire before we get out of here for like 2 minutes from all your guys in the comments, because you've been awesome. Also, for all the people who have been saying nice things in the comments, we see them. We appreciate you. Honestly, I got to do that Derek Klassen interview right after this. So I'm a little pressed for time, but much appreciated, everybody. Bryce Behringer going to be a top 3 punter in the league this year? I think maybe. I think so. And I also want a quick reminder that tomorrow we're doing our Pats Beat Pats Daily Punters Draft live on Patriots CLNS 7:30 podcast. We're going to talk about what happened at Patriots practice at 7:30. We're going to transition into our punter draft at 8 p.m. So I guess we'll see if we think Bryce is the top 3 punter, because maybe he goes in the top 3 of our punters draft tomorrow. But that guy's a wagon. Also, real quick, UDFA, yes, Del Pettis was the undrafted free agent to make the roster. The streak is alive again.
Yes.
It's not really a streak, I guess. It's just one, but it's there. All right. You want to do the rapid fire questions? Or
let's see what else we got here. Man, a lot of it is just crapping on the Patriots. Here we go. Patriots wide receiver, who will have the best fantasy season? I think it's either Pop or Jalen Polk.
Yeah, I'd go Jalen Polk, because I think he can actually stay on the field and will be on the field more than Pop.
Okay, that's fair.
Hunter Henry also sneaky, just touchdowns. If like his tight ends, I feel like it's such a tough position to get somebody who's good. If Hunter Henry's healthy, he's probably catching a touchdown.
Yeah. All right, draft talk already. Would you rather they reach at offensive tackle in the first round, or take a wide receiver and not reach at that position? I think go.
Sorry, my bad. I'm sorry.
Nope. No, I want to hear it.
I'm so sick and tired of talking about tackles. Take the freaking tackle.
Yeah.
You got your great quarterback. Get some complimentary receivers. Just protect him so we don't have to talk about this anymore. I'm so tired of it.
Taylor loves tackle talk. Who's their best return option? And then this is our last one, because then we Taylor really has to go. Best return option as a kick returner and as a punt returner.
Kick returner, another one that I posted on Twitter, Antonio Gibson sneakily, because it was him and Jalen Reagor. It was Antonio Gibson mostly blocking, but Gibson was the second guy on the return team. So you wonder if now it's going to be him and then Kevin Harris, who was the other returner when David Wallace was a kick returner. Gibson actually had a big return last year against the Pats where he broke a tackle from Brendan Schooler and then outran Matthew Slater for a big gain. So that was pretty cool. And then punt return, it's got to be Marcus Jones.
Yeah, I agree.
I just don't know if Marcus Jones is a good kick returner. We haven't really seen him do it in a competitive setting, so I just don't really. They're different things. But punt returner, it's Marcus Jones with a bullet.
Yeah, I agree. I've probably mentioned it 3, 4, 5, 6 times on this podcast now, but I want to see Isaiah Bull to get in the mix if he does end up on the active roster at some point as a kick returner, one of the best in college football a couple years ago. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, that's going to do it. What do you got?
Okay. DK Metcalf because he's the better player. Super easy. DK Metcalf is a much better player, I think.
I like it. All right, and then he's your ex, and then we don't have to worry about making excuses for Taekwon anymore. Exactly. If DK Metcalf comes here. All right.
We don't have to make excuses for Taekwon. Fingers crossed.
True. All right, that's it for our Monday mailbag here on Patriots Daily. We'll be back tomorrow. Scheduled TBD, but we're going to be back Wednesday for another mailbag. We'll ask for your questions. Bengals-centric stuff, matchup-centric stuff. So we'll get to all that stuff with a guest on Wednesday as well. So then we're into game week. We're going to have a bunch of other cool stuff for you coming down the pipe. So make sure to rate, review, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Like I said last time, helps us out a lot. And read all our stuff at clnsmedia.com. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you soon. Peace out.